Hi, everyone, and welcome back to another session of the Pursuit Power Half Hour. I'm Brent, and today I'm joined by Sarah Edwards, Kantata's Chief Product Strategy Officer. We're excited to dig into some of the biggest challenges consulting firms are already facing and that are only going to get more intense as we head into 2026. For many of you, this will sound familiar. Client expectations are higher than ever. They want measurable outcomes. They want them fast. And at the same time, firms are being asked to deliver senior judgment and expertise at scale. All of this with AI in the mix, while talent models, delivery systems, and planning processes are struggling to keep up. Today, we're going to unpack what that really means in practice and talk through how firms need to rethink resourcing and delivery in 2026, how to better communicate human expertise with AI, move faster on outcome-based delivery, and build the visibility and trust needed to keep pace. So, Sarah, before we dive in, if you could give some of our listeners a little intro about yourself, your exposure and background in consulting, and your current role.
Yeah, it's great to be here, Brent, and great to meet everyone. Sarah Edwards, so Chief Product Strategy Officer at Kantata. My background is consulting. So, over the last sort of 25 years, I've worked as a consultant. I've run global consulting teams in large organizations and both small services businesses as well. So it's an industry that I'm really passionate about and have worked in for a long time. And obviously at Kantata, really working at Kantata to learn from and look at how is this industry changing. I think, if I look back on my career, I think it's an industry that traditionally helped their clients drive transformation and change, yet still in the back office ran their businesses as they've always done. And I think actually with everything you just mentioned, Brent, I think there is so much more increasing pressure now to drive transformation in this industry. And I think that's really what excites me, is the opportunity to help services firms grow and change the way they operate. In fact, not only do I have my role at Kantata, I'm now president of the Leaders in Consulting community, and I now host monthly forums in London where we bring together services leaders to talk about, what they see as some of the challenges in the industry and some of the challenges and opportunities that they face.
Let's kick off with that. This role you've got, president of the London chapter of Leaders in Consulting, must give you a really unique, unfettered view into what peers in consulting are wrestling with. What are you, for our listeners, what are you hearing most about rising client expectations, the strain that's putting on ultimately delivery, gross margin for the firm, and teams and talent?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we hosted a forum in London in January, and the forums bring together 10 to 15 services leaders, so, C-level and above. And it's all about sharing experiences. It's not about giving advice or having the answer. It's about sharing some of the experiences that we face as services leaders. And there were so many common threads. Probably the highest one was everyone is being asked to deliver faster and to deliver that at lower cost, with less risk. Customers' expectations have absolutely continued to rise. And I think, some firms are being, those expectations rise, and it's the challenge of how do we meet those expectations, and often that's leading to teams burning out. We can't scale our infrastructure, or we don't have the infrastructure in place to really sort of scale at the demands that our customers are meeting. And I think ultimately that leads to every services leader I've spoken to over the last sort of 6 months, as we sort of start to think about 2026 and beyond. Actually, the question they're all trying to answer is, how do I grow my revenue without just growing headcount? I need to show that I can deliver more with less. Yes, people are still important to my business. I think, that's not changing. But how do I continue to grow my revenue without just linearly growing headcount as part of that? I think traditionally this is services or organizations that have billed in hours, but hours are decreasing. We're billing in hours, yet we're showing that with AI, we can now deliver more for less. Well, how do we now price? And I think that pressure to price in different ways, to price on value is also, a growing pressure on services firms. And then actually just to bring it back to people, in fact, we had a great discussion at the Leaders in Consulting event where actually people are still really important, but actually talked about the idea of that traditional pyramid is crumbling, that we still need talent in our business, but actually the shape of that talent is changing. And, I don't necessarily need all of the graduates that I used to bring in and, spend sort of 10 years building their careers up. Actually, it's a bit of a like reverse pyramid. I need the people at the top and the middle who can really still provide great, expertise and consulting to our customers, but I'm automating a lot at the bottom. So I think there's so many different pressures that are facing services firms, but I think it's also opportunities to really transform how you deliver, your services and how you grow your revenue, by not just growing headcount.
So in the US and, the global business press, I mean, you could just throw a rock and hit the latest, maybe gloom and doom prognosticator or just observation about how AI is exploding the consulting business. Businesses that are oriented to fee to some type of output or outcome, whether that's high level analysis and strategy for a firm, whether it's creating outputs, digital assets, and you brought up the fact that AI is now really exploding that traditional talent pyramid. But let's talk about that a little bit and some of the peers, what you're hearing. Why is there this tension, this immediate tension where they're feeling more stressed, even if there is some AI adoption that could be automating some of the work that was previously the domain of, lots of well-meaning, earnest, fresh college grads? Is there a gap between AI adoption and real delivery acceleration showing up in some of these firms?
Yeah, I think there is. I mean, I think there's a lot of surface level AI adoption that's gone on. I think everyone's showing that, yes, I can get AI to summarize my meeting notes. Yes, I can, use ChatGPT to do some research for me. And that's just really giving me lots more data. And, all this stuff is coming at me now faster than ever before. But I think, is it really changing the way that we operate as a business? I think it's, quite scattered at the moment across the businesses that I talk to. And it's not actually been rooted in how do I use this as strategic transformation? How are we really changing the way that we package and that we sell and we deliver our services? And how are we really changing the nature of the sort of workforce that we remain? I think some firms don't even still have some of the basics right. I mean, again, remember, this is an industry that I think has been out there delivering great transformation to our projects, to our customers for years. Yet, how many services firms are still running their businesses off disjointed systems, reliance on spreadsheet, etc. And AI doesn't just fix all of that. Actually, you have to make sure that you've got that trusted data source, that you've got the right processes in your business, and those processes are connected all the way from, how you shape and sell something, to how you deliver that, to how you resource that, to how you ultimately, forecast and generate your revenue. All of that needs to be connected. And I think unless they've got some of those basics in place, it's very hard to unlock what is ultimately the true power of AI to really help you transform your business. So I think, there's still a lot of firms struggling out there in leveraging AI to operationally sort of transform their businesses. I think some people are starting to make quicker progress than others, but I think there's still a real challenge in the industry.
The idea here that, people and expertise really are the product of consulting, right? I mean, and there's still demand for senior experience, judgment, acumen, expertise. Those, particularly we see this in consulting, practice leaders that are very vertically specialized, whether that's in public sector, transportation, aviation, certainly health, life sciences, all those types of vertical specialties. So there's still a demand for that, right? Clients really need and seek that out. How are those firms reconciling that demand for that senior talent with maybe the client pressure or expectation that you're using AI to move faster to the answer, and without sort of overloading these experienced people, and then quality diminishes? Is there anyone in your conversations that's sort of doing this well?
I think there's some that are starting to. I totally agree with you. And the overall message that I'm hearing is that I still need those experts in my business. I need the people with the deep industry expertise. And actually what I need to enable is for them to do more. If I can enable them to deliver, faster, quicker, more quality to our customers, and actually how do I support them? And we've got some clients that are starting to and have actually already deployed sort of what they're calling consulting assistants. So they're assistants, which are AI that are really supporting the partners or the senior resources to go and have, and be able to deliver better quality faster to those customers. So again, it's not necessarily about more headcount. It is about how do I make those people more productive? And we're definitely seeing some success in that. I still think there's a real challenge. I think some of it is a cultural challenge. I mean, I think one of the things that, it was interesting, I was talking to a partner-based business the other day, is that the people at the top, their partners who are out there, they've been doing this for years. It's really hard to change the way they operate.
Absolutely.
So, I think actually some of this is a change management issue. And it was somebody I saw present the other day. It talked about like everyone in their business, regardless of their seniority, should be able to build agents and should be able to build their own agents. Because unless you do that, you don't understand the technology and really how transformational it can be. And I think you've got the challenge of you've got this new talent coming in at the bottom that I think absolutely gets this. That's how they're an AI first sort of generation. But you've got this at the top of the pyramid, you've got these, people who've got the industry knowledge and expertise that you absolutely need. But I think there's a change management issue in terms of how do we have the right people that can start adopting, our AI technology and assistance to deliver better.
We published recently a state of the professional services industry report. And, of course, I think it was validation on many of the things you were discussing. And one of the data vignettes show that 90% of firms believe they'll need to attribute work, outcome, cost, value across humans. And, we presume kind of this bucket of agentic AI. If, you're a firm out there and you're experiencing this, right? You have very senior partners with extremely deep industry expertise at the pinnacle of their productive years. And someone's saying to them, you have to go out and build kind of multi-agentic workflows. How do you kind of meet in the middle? What foundations do firms need to start putting in place to make some of that change management possible?
Yeah, I think some of it is around, you talked about expertise earlier, and that's something that we talk a lot about at Kantata in our sort of vision around expertise. And I think it comes back to this is, how do you surface and reuse expertise across the business? Because I think at the moment it's been an industry, again, that's been reliant on, I'm reliant on heroes in the business, someone who is going to go out and, fix this customer, have this conversation with this customer. We don't really take that knowledge and lesson learned and experience and share that across the business. Actually, I want to take all my good consultants and I want to make them great consultants because they're learning from the best and we're sharing those experiences and knowledge. And I think that's where AI can absolutely help. How do we take that expertise, as to why, a lot of the metrics we track in our businesses is, well, it will tell me what happened, but it doesn't really tell me why. Why did this happen? Was it the dynamics of the customer? Was it, what caused this project to overrun, or what made this project successful? And if we can truly leverage AI to help us understand that and share that expertise across the business, I think that starts to change some of the behaviors, and it starts to also grow the workforce and knowledge that you need across your business. So in fact, I spoke to a customer yesterday where they've got deep expertise in certain industries. They want to now take that and be able to apply that to different industries. And they said, actually, what we need to be able to do is surface up that expertise, what we've learned from what we've been able to package up. And now how do I share that expertise to other people across the business that can do the same in other verticals that we're moving into? So I think some of this is around, it definitely comes back to change management and make sure you've got the right people and skills in your workforce, but also how do you get quick wins? How do you start to show the power of AI and how that can start to create that continuous learning loop across the business? So you're starting to share that knowledge and expertise and surfacing that up to make people better.
To springboard off of that evolution is rapid. I mean, it's here and it's upon us, but one transformative element, I think, of consulting has been in discussion. I mean, I can think of, my experience in consulting, and this goes back 10, 15 years, this idea of outcome-based pricing, value-based pricing. The billable hour threshold is under pressure, and what clients are willing to pay kind of decreases over time. Your thesis is, in the discussions you're having, particularly in things like the leaders in consulting, we're certainly seeing it with a lot of our Kantata clients, that there are firms kind of embracing this, and there's various stages, a spectrum of value pricing and outcome based pricing, but they're starting to move away from all traditional kind of staff roll up engagement modeling, billable hour, and either lightly package, whether that's some fixed price with a performance rubric or something different. You see around 50% of the firms already doing this. Is this finally upon us? I mean, we've been talking about this type of pricing for years, not exposing rate cards to procurement, all these types of things. But where do you think some firms are doing this well, and where are organizations getting stuck when it comes to doing this?
And you're definitely right, Brent. It's something the industry's talked about for a long time, and there's been a lot of skepticism that we'll ever get there. But I think for the first time, I'm now talking to more and more customers that are doing some of this. And it may not be total outcome or value-based pricing. I might be doing it, as you say, fixed fee, but I'm having some sort of success payment or success fee on top. And I think more and more firms, in fact, I was talking to some customers last week, and the feedback was, even if I'm not doing it today, they recognized, actually, I need to do this next. Because, what I used to be able to deliver for the customer on an hourly day rate, I've just shown that with AI and, technology we're building, I can deliver it in half the number of hours. Well, the customer is not going to they still want to pay the same, sort of day rate. Or how do I translate that into value? So absolutely, firms have got to think about this. They've got to think about, and I think the challenge is for some firms behind the curve, they can't even get to confident fixed price, pricing and delivery. If you can't really get to the stage that you can confidently know what it's going to take to deliver this and it's repeatable, it's very hard to then tie, without a high level of risk, outcome-based sort of pricing to it. So I think you've seen that shift from sort of T&M to probably fixed fee and annuity-based. I think value is now upon us. And I think more and more firms are going to be looking to do at least some part of value or outcome-based pricing next year. The other thing that I'm seeing shifting is a lot of the services businesses that I'm talking to are moving away from being pure services. They're packaging up some of the AI or technology they're building, and they're becoming product organizations. So yes, I've still got services at the core, but how do I take some of that technology and I'm going to sell it to the customer as a product? I'm going to make that, productized services. I'm going to make it more of an annuity-based payment. And I'm definitely seeing more firms, looking at that, particularly as they, develop some of the technology that, that's helping them deliver to their customers.
So we've discussed pricing and accelerating client outputs with AI, and certain firms are on a real spectrum of the stage of maturity they are with that. But let's turn inward for a moment to internal service firms' operations and using AI to inform decision making. And we've got some interesting research that came out of the State of Professional Service Industry Report. And I'll read off a few of the stats. 12% of leaders saying they fully trust data in their systems. And there's obviously a huge delta in trust there. How do companies build the confidence they need to move faster without adding additional layers and double checking and friction? However, 88% of the teams say they use AI outputs to make or inform operational decisions, but 89% still feel the need to double check them. So what does that say about the trust of operational data inside professional services organizations?
It says that I don't think we've got it right yet. I mean, I think the foundations aren't there. Like, I still think people are, making progress and showing how AI can generate, customer outputs or generate or help them operationally, forecast, produce a forecast of their business. But actually, unless it's connected to the right data sources, and unless it's connected to still having the right processes that are connected across your business, I think that falls over eventually. I don't think this isn't about putting a generic ChatGPT into the business and telling me, what's my services forecast. We all know that services has always been a really challenging business because it's connected to people, it's connected to clients, it's connected to hours and days, so many variables that drive our forecasts, that drive our actuals. And I think unless you can put a system in place that understands that connects and gets that foundation in place, I think it's very hard to get the potential that AI, can really deliver for firms. And I think you're just stuck with, as you say, you don't trust the data, or you end up using the data, but you're putting all these constant checks in to make sure that, that data works. So again, it comes back to getting the foundations in place, connecting that data and getting the right data sources that really understands how a services business is run.
So we're early in 2026, and prioritization, the enterprise planning for the next year is well underway, as well as sort of the pace of client work. But given everything we've discussed here, Sarah, and some of the insights from the leaders in consulting, talent pressure, AI adoption, the expectations to move to more outcome pricing, that's a lot for firms to take on. Where would you advise that professional service leaders focus first to align the combination of talent, AI, and delivery without breaking trust and hopefully still making a profit?
Yeah, I mean, I think, and I'm starting to see this with services firms, it is about, have we got the foundations in place to start with? Because again, I think if you're running off of spreadsheets, disjointed systems, you don't have mapped out operationally, how do we want to operate as a business? And actually, how do we need to operate as a business today, but also tomorrow? I think unless you've mapped that out, I think it's very hard to drive that transformation. And I think we're starting to see positive signs of that. I mean, we're seeing more and more customers, wanting to look at getting the foundations in place. I want to get my processes connected. I want to get confidence in that data. I've got to start driving the right behaviors across the business. And if I can get some of that in place, and that to me is the foundation to really then move to, change how you price something. I'll give an example. I think it's very hard. So many firms still don't really understand what it truly costs to deliver a project, and they still don't have it right in terms of how do I scope that and how am I learning from real world delivery to make sure that when I scope something and I cost it, we're going to have confidence in delivering that project, with a great experience to the customer, to time and value to the customer, but also internally managing our margin. And if I still, if projects are still broken or they're still very hard to sort of scope and get right, how do you transform that? Well, you have to transform that by getting the basics right. Can I get the basics right with, moving a project to fixed fee? And if I get confidence in that, then I'll have confidence to probably price and link that to sort of outcome or success fees or, some sort of outcome-based pricing. So I think it still comes back to getting some of the basics in place. And I think this is the year to really move on that, because I think if you can get that connected data and processes and systems in place and operationally think about how you need to operate as a business, that's what's going to unlock the true value of AI.
Thank you, everyone, for joining us today, and particularly Sarah for sharing your insights on how firms can navigate this very dynamic time of expectations, prioritization, and competing in the next era of consulting. We look forward to hearing more from you, particularly your insights. Given your new role, I think that will be really, really impactful to our listeners. If you'd like to see how Kantata can help you solve some of these challenges, please stick around, and our solution engineer will walk you through a quick demonstration of the platform. Thanks again, everyone. We look forward to seeing you again soon for our next session.
Hi, everyone. I'm Jackie. One of the biggest shifts consulting firms have to make in 2026 is moving from reactive delivery to proactive outcome-driven planning. Clients expect speed, certainty, and measurable impact, but most firms are still planning capacity and revenue after deals are sold using disconnected tools and lagging data. The first shift is visibility, connecting demand, delivery, and financials in one system so leaders can act with confidence, not just gut feel. I'm going to show you how pipeline opportunities can flow directly from your CRM into Kantata. And this isn't just about forecasting revenue, it's about seeing future demand early enough to plan the right capacity, mix senior judgment with scalable delivery, and protect margin before work even starts. Then we'll look at how that visibility carries through once a project is live, using the new account financials to forecast revenue across a portfolio in real time. So this is where the second and third shifts come together, accelerating outcome-based delivery while building trust in the data teams used to make decisions. So in many professional services organizations, the forecast is a static snapshot, out of date the moment it's published. And Kantata transforms this into a living forecast by bridging the gap between sales and delivery. By integrating directly with your CRM, Kantata can pull pipeline opportunities into the delivery environment before the contract is even signed. It creates a culture of data discipline and ensures that the forecast is both timely and trustworthy. Instead of reacting to sign deals with more of that fire drill mentality, your delivery team gains the runway needed to anticipate demand, align the right skills, and make proactive data-driven decisions. So we have that one-stop shop here for identifying all upcoming demand, to know exactly what needs our attention, what we need to prioritize when staffing, perhaps even based on the probability of this deal to close. Right. And by arming the system with all the accurate demand forecast, it enables our teams to quickly run staffing scenarios with AI to identify the most optimal team for these engagements. Right. Based on role, availability, skill match, cost impact, how can we find the best team every time? Right. Being able to swap in, if I know that Casey works really well with this client, how can we understand each team member's criteria and availability? Now, by taking into account all active and pipeline engagements, we can more accurately forecast capacity and hiring needs, right? Whether that's across the whole organization or down to specific roles or skill sets. Essentially, how busy is the team and what are those future demands? So how much work do we have staffed to that current team? How much placeholder pipeline work do we need to account for? And if all of that work is confirmed, what is the remaining capacity amongst the team? Right? If we're overworked, as we can see here, by almost 2 FTEs, if this is a matter of a couple weeks, maybe we can bring on some contractors or push out some of the work. But if this is consistently negative month over month, we probably do need to look into hiring and accounting for ramp time and all of those various factors to take on this demand. So this is something where, again, the pipeline data from the CRM can play a direct impact, even being able to filter by that probability as well. Now, not only can we forecast capacity and demand, but Kantata allows you to accurately and confidently forecast revenue. So real-time financial dashboards give finance leaders and PMs instant visibility into forecast versus actuals, reducing surprises and improving profitability. So here we can take a look at the revenue across the entire organization, as well as recognized amounts and the calculated revenue for each period based on the selected recognition method. And this transforms revenue forecasting from a manual project-by-project guessing game into more of a unified real-time strategic plan. Right? By centralizing cross-project data into the single source of truth, it allows finance leaders to, again, bridge that gap between historical performance and future expectations. With our closing checklist really acting as a safeguard for that forecast accuracy, requiring verification on forecasted revenue, on timesheet approvals before period closes, Kantata is really ensuring that the data feeding into the next forecast is clean, approved, auditable. So eliminating what we often hear as kind of a cascading error effect, where bad data from a previous month ruins the future projections and on and on. So organizations can move from reactive accounting towards more proactive revenue management here, providing the transparency needed to see not just where revenue stands today, but exactly where it's headed tomorrow, allowing for better informed hiring, investment, and growth decisions. Thanks for joining today, everyone. The goal isn't just better reporting. It's giving firms a single source of truth so they can coordinate people, AI leverage, and financial outcomes and move at the speed clients now expect.